In Tati's movie, what I'm interested in is that how he make a trick by setting the object and showing the reflection in the glass wall in the precise timing in his camera framing. In this clip, first we can see this man came from the right side of the scene by the reflection of the glass wall. Then, in the reflection, the man walks until he disappeared in the middle of the scene. The next scene shows that he actually came in from the left side instead of the right side, and this is another reference like this. He shows what he wants us to see and catch our eyes to make us feel we are being tricked by his camera framing. The framing of architecture always makes us believe that they are leading us to somewhere or to see something by framing a view or making a frame-by-frame corridor. But when the place adding such as a mirror, that can suddenly change what we can see or even making an illusion to mislead us because of the material. The story of Li Bai. While he's alone and get drunk and try to fetch the moon, which is the reflection of the moon on the water actually. The illusion of the moon leads him fall into the water. But sometimes, the illusion can cause a good trick for people to see what can't even happen in reality or make another atmosphere. In Stanley Kubrick movie, he always liked to use camera movement, making a camera framing in precise ways to make the illusion to unsettle the audience. One of his techniques is that he used zoom in and zoom out to make a contrast of what he wants us to notice. Like this film technique in real world, we can see some corridor making a trick by the scale of the column size, the ceiling height, and the object in the end of the corridor to mislead us about the real scale of the corridor. And Kubrick often used other way is using one-point perspective to make a weird atmosphere, and trapping audience nerve in the world that he created. Like this Chinese garden art culture, making people appreciate the scenery gradually, get the big picture from small details, seeing through these frames, some of them just like it is an endless garden. About making trick in the film by the actor and camera's movement, this is another film which using this way with a mirror.
Airport management, the FAA, and the airlines. Oh, cheats and liars. All right, let's get out of here.
As this kind of trick that we can estimate it, what the room and the doors leads us to. I use the Stanley Kubrick movie, The Shining, scenes to make a test, and make some trick in this scene. The character is kindly trapped in this space and manipulated by the spaces, and the trick of where the door will lead to and what we will see when the doors open, making a trick of what we have preset in our mind. This is my film. As the tricks in the city, in reality, when I walked in Zhongyonghe in Taipei, I always tricked by the road intersection and went into dead alleys accidentally where there is no sign. And I found lots of dead alleys in this Zhongyonghe district, which is a blind spot while walking when we are not looking at the map. In history, Zhongyonghe's urban planning is planned to be a garden city, Along with lots of people flock to this district and the government planning failure, the park removed and the building built. So this place, that government have a dream of making it as a garden city which has lots of green field between blocks, gradually turned into a messy, crowded, high-density living area, and lots of narrow alley and dead alleys appeared. So at this moment, when we got into this district, it feels like we are trapped into a maze. And something usually make a trick to people is a place with a complex land use. Sometimes we are using other people's land accidentally because we consider it as a public space. In addition to use those public space, people put personal belongings into a place which is complex land use, and using pavement to show the boundaries between their space and the public spaces. There are people using painting the color to claim their ownership, and sometimes we were confused of the ownership by the color of the walls, ceilings, and the spaces. And we also see lots of staircase between two buildings and without a closing door. Make me think of, is it public or private land? And the stamped tin roof made me wonder whether here is indoor or outdoor. So I think when we accidentally go into the maze-like spaces, like being tricked by the city, just as Li by fetching the moon, we are blinded by something we just see and believe of what we see, but yet we don't know that is not what we thought about. This is my film.
From a wine pot amidst the flowers, I drink alone without partners. To invite the moon I raise my cup. We're three, as my shadow shows up. Alas, the moon doesn't drink. My shadow follows but doesn't think. Still for now I have these friends, to cheer me up until the spring ends. I sing, the moon wanders. I dance, the shadow scatters. Awake, together we have fun. Drunk, separately we're. Let's be boon companions forever. Pledging, in heaven, we'll be together.
There are 3 types of alleys appear in my video. These 2 types of covered alleys, and the dead end alleys. And this is the first type of the covered alleys. So when we ran into a zone just like a maze, where the road is not that straight and vertical, and we don't know where this narrow alley leads to, and whether we can pass through that alley completely. Just like we are in the continuous street house, we don't know where every door leads to, which space we will get into along the stairs, and what view we will see through every windows. In this section, I used the shade part to make a hint of the hiding routes which is behind the wall where we can see. And there are lots of doors just like a doorway of the dead-end alleys. May not lead the way to where we are expected. And the entrance of this street house maze is a staircase. And in the planar isometric, we can see some door will lead to the room beside and some cannot. I choose a site in Yonghe, where the building was built in a messy way. And I imagine how inside the buildings look like, and imagine which building owns the tiny building beside them in these alleys, and make a supposition of the sequence of when those buildings appeared. I think the beauty of Yonghe is that because of the urban planning failure of the garden city, the mixed using of public spaces and the private spaces occurred frequently. People who don't live there were tricked by the use of the spaces when we go there and get lost. And people live in there will use some spaces together in different times and share those spaces in an invisible way. So about this plan, I use pavings, furnitures, and the trees to find out or emphasize the garden city-like relationship between spaces in this zone. And I'm trying to remake a new types of the garden city with the situation in Yonghe this zone. Besides, there are 3 layers that I am trying to talk about. First is the complex land use, which I use pavings and furnitures mixed by the spaces inside and outside. Second is the blind spot in these zones, whether the dead end alleys or the visual blind spot. And the third one is the framing. Mostly I use furniture to emphasize it, such as a couch or trees on the both sides and the frame under the table to emphasize the long straight road from one door to another door. So I think this urban failure is not that failed. Maybe when we change the way we use our private spaces and public spaces and make a new type of garden city, taking a journey and getting lost together in this beautiful maze.
I imagine the labyrinth of labyrinths, a maze of mazes. A twisting, turning, ever-widening labyrinth that contained both past and future and somehow implied the stars. I felt myself, for an indefinite while, the abstract perceiver of the world. The vague, living countryside, the moon, the remains of the day did their work in me. So did the gently downward road, which forestalled all possibility of weariness. The evening was near, yet infinite.